All right, we're live. So, well, welcome everyone. Happy February. This is our second monthly call of the year. I got several agenda topics, and hopefully you can see the slides or the screen that I'm sharing. So give me a second. Like, um, sorry about that. I had to close a window because the audio was going haywire. But yeah, so we got several interesting topics today that we want to go over. So without further ado, we'll get started. As a reminder, again, as we do with all of our events or meetings, just want to remind everyone of our community code of conduct. You can see the full text there. And then there's also an email address if you, for unfortunately seeing inappropriate behavior for reporting purposes, but just a quick reminder of that. So agenda, I will, as usual, we'll start with the community news, and we have, I believe, several people from the Cyndx team on the call. We're able to get this published, last week, which we're very excited about, following the other user story we did with Jobber a couple of months ago. So thanks Cyndx team for joining us today. And our team is going to also go over some of the feature demos, some of the new features that our team is working on. So those are the agenda topics for today. If you have any questions like during the call, feel free to just vocalize your questions, or if you want to stay on mute, feel free to type your questions on chat, and we'll do our best to address them as well. All right, so jumping on to the community news, there was a blog post that went out earlier this week. Just wanted to talk about the community contributions that, I've been, this is, I guess, my fourth month at Cube. I've been seeing a lot of great contributions, and also wanted to celebrate some of the work that's being done by our community members. As an open source project, we're only as good as community participation and community contributions. And we want to we're still figuring out ways to fun ways to recognize people that are contributing to the community. As I've been in community management for several years, and this is probably my favorite part of the job. Celebrating successes and great contributions, and recognizing people in the community. But I also understand this is a delicate balance. We all obviously want to celebrate successes and show appreciation, but we also want to make sure that this isn't something that's transactional. Just giving a simple trinket in return for something. I think a lot of people participate in open source project for many reasons. And a lot of people are driven by just, it's what I call like intrinsic motivation. They generally care about either the technology or helping other people. And then if you don't do the recognitions appropriately, it can actually have a negative effect on it. So that's something that all community managers I think try to pay attention to. We started doing this. Over the holidays, it was a good time to reach out to people. And you've probably seen some Twitter posts, and I have a picture of that on the blog post. People celebrating some of the fun swags that's been going out, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do more of that throughout the year. And the other thing that we wanted to be cognizant of is, even to this day, when people think of open source, people think mostly in terms of code. Code contribution obviously is great. We're getting a lot of them, but we also want to recognize other, what I would call non-code contributions, like helping each other out on Slack or other forums, opening issues or bugs, or reporting bugs, and providing content. Like, user stories are a great example, but other contents too, like blog posts. We had a number of them published over the past few months. And the other thing that we want to look at is, maybe even an easier way to contribute content or examples is something like video. That's something that we'll think about in the future. But we want to to be cognizant of different ways that people contribute to the community. And so the final piece of the recognition that you saw on the second half of the blog post was although a lot of people don't contribute just for the sake of recognition, but I think it's important to recognize people that in many cases devoted a lot of time and even gone above and beyond to make both the community and our software where it is today. So we announced the first class of what we call Cube.js heroes, and I think many of the at least I see JC and Ricardo on the call. So at least we have a couple of people on the call. I mean, 3 individuals, as you'll see on the blog post. Let me just switch windows here. I'll let them introduce themselves in a few minutes, but I mean, you'll notice that all 3 of them have been contributing to or been part of our community for over a year. I mean, it's not like we artificially set a timestamp of 12 plus months. It just worked out that way. But these folks have made a lot of contributions to the community. I really in many different ways. So I really appreciate. And also want to congratulate them for being our first class of heroes. And the other thing that we wanted to do in the heroes is we also wanted to really focus on diversity and inclusion. I mean, a lot of organizations and communities talk about diversity and inclusion over the past few years, but I think this is something that we really want to focus on. We're still a young community. We really want to emphasize this, not just in terms of demographics, but in terms of their industry use cases and geography. So I think we have a good balance of people in our first class. So definitely are excited about the first group of people, and you'll probably get to see them more, not just on monthly calls, but you've probably seen them in Slack and other forums. So want to definitely congratulate these folks as our first class of heroes. And I think I see, all JC, Tanvi, and Ricardo on the call. So I'll quickly ask them to quickly introduce yourselves really quickly. Feel free to unmute and turn the video on if you feel comfortable. But I mean, JC, I'll start with you. I mean, just a quick intro to introduce yourself would be great.
Sure, thanks, Jay. Hi, I'm JC. I work at Jobber, and we're using Cube today to power some features on a dashboard. There's actually a recent blog post about how we're using it. We're connected to Postgres and thinking about using it against Redshift going in the future against our warehouse. And I've been at Jobber for about 5 years now, or just about 5 years, and that's, I guess, the rest. I'm just looking at the screen. Pretty much everything else I could say is right there. So nice to meet you all.
Cool. Thanks, JC. Ricardo, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hey, I'm Ricardo. I work at Quadrate. It's a test automation platform for SAP and web customers, and we are using Cube to bring forward most of the generated analytics and result sets based on the test automation itself. So it was a great way to provide our users with meaningful information easily.
Cool, thanks. All right, Tanvi, last but not least.
Hey guys, I'm working with Kota here in New York from last 3 years. We have been using Cube, I would say around 2 years now. Initially started with the vanilla JavaScripts and now Angular. So we use it with Angular, Cube, and BigQuery, and we are all using Node and everything. So Cube has been I would say an integral part of our products, which we have been using for, as Ricardo said, for analytics and everything. So yeah, feel free to ping me or anyone here for any questions you have.
Cool, appreciate that. And yeah, like I said, you'll definitely probably see them on a regular basis on calls and other forums. So congrats again, and thanks for becoming our first class of heroes. And I mean, finally, before we switch topics here, I mean, obviously this is sort of our first iteration of our heroes program, and you'll probably see some possible changes in the future in terms of, like, you know, how we add new members, etc. But any feedback you have, I mean, please feel free to let me know. So that's it in terms of community update, and I want to turn things over to the Cyndx team for the user story. Let me advance the slides here. And I think we have Sebastian, Shandy, Chris, and others on the call. So yeah, why don't I have ask Cyndx team to quickly introduce yourself, and I'll probably ask you some questions. But like I said, I encourage everyone on the call, if you have any questions, feel free to add them on the chat or verbalize your questions. Sebastian, do you want to get started with like a quick intro, like about yourself and the company as well? So
great. So my name is Sebastian. Excited to be a part of the Cube community. Came across Cube about last year, but spent most of my career in data. I mean, like many of the people around the table, a long time ago, I was a university researcher doing machine learning and genetics. Naturally fell into the data fields, and through data engineering, eventually took over the position where I am now as the CTO at Cyndx. And what is Cyndx? The best way to put us is we are an AI-based search and discovery tool, helping leading financial institutions, VCs, PE firms, identify potential companies to invest in, as well as helping companies who are looking to raise capital identify potential investors and helping them to discover companies who have invested in similar search spaces as them. Now, this sounds like a very naturally data-centric field. And when I came on board, our platform was built in such a way that anything that was done that related to tables, plots, for example, was really built in custom one-off graphs or custom one-off tables. And coming from a data background, I immediately thought there had to be a better solution for this. So in the spring of 2020, sorry, we started embarking on trials through the most commonly seen after players. So the Tableaus, the Lookers, the Cyndxes, the Cumul.ios, the Domos, you name it, we did a trial with it. And our biggest problem was we really spent a lot of time investing in our platform and investing in the design and the look and feel and the UX of the platform. We really want to integrate a BI tool that wouldn't sacrifice that wouldn't run through iframes and wouldn't give the users the feeling that they were leaving the platform every time they want to interact with our analytics. Every company we spoke to, whether it was the Lookers or the Tableaus, kept saying, well, we can support your back end, but we can't quite do what you want on the front end. You can theme it, you can make it feel close, but the second the user interacts with the system, it will not be the same anymore. They're going to feel drop-down menus that are not native to your app. And this was really a blocker for us. Further, when you deal with the iframes, we are an AI-based system. So when someone clicks on a button in our system, our ultimate goal is that triggers our algorithms to run searches, run things like cosine similarity, identify comparables for the end users. And we didn't want to have to interact with a webhook essentially to run these actions. We wanted it to be native to the system. So I don't even remember who first came across Cube in our system, but we found it and we said, hey, let's give it a shot, because we knew we were going to have to do front-end development, but Cube gave us the Looker and the LookML style interface that we knew, that we loved, that we were used to, but allowed us to inject it directly into our web app. So probably within about 24 hours or so, we were up and running with the demo. And this was a demo that we had just a senior data analyst put together and come back and say, hey, this can look and feel like our system. We gave it a couple more hours. A front-end engineer started working with it, and the look and feel was there. And people were very excited. Wow, hey, this is easy, actually. We can build this on our platform. And we started to go farther than we had initially anticipated, because we started to realize with this, we would be able to not only transform our platform into a self-serve search and discovery tool, but also allow our internal engineers and analysts to build out on our platform using Cube. So over time, we started to translate a lot of our company profile pages to be actually reliant on Cube in the back end. So if someone is looking at a table about detailed financials on a company, they're trying to look at what are the balance statements or the income statements or the cash flow for a company, that's actually all generated by Cube in the back end. And with Cube, we were able to now standardize what our tables look like. We created one table template, and everywhere it's called has that exact same look and feel. But when we need to add a new column, analysts were empowered to update the schema.js files on their own and make changes directly in the GUI, and it would roll out to every company. So this created a huge benefit to us. And once we also standardized the drill downs and everything else, all of a sudden, every single chart was interactive. And we were exposing data points that we didn't think were possible originally. So it's been an astounding success for us, but we do run with BigQuery in the back end. And always when you're trying to relay information quickly to your end users, the speed of that request is important. So one thing we are fortunate about is our value proposition is saving our end users, who are often investment bankers, a week of work by using our tool for half an hour. So if something takes 1 second to load or 2 seconds to load, that wasn't a real fundamental issue for us because we were saving them so much time. But we combined DBT into the workflow to help pre-process some of the data to make it more efficient. So we would have a nightly DBT job running through DBT Cloud, which would do basic cleanup on the data, also adding things like partition keys across all of the rows, such that when we select the tables, we're automatically looking at a subset of the data and we're not having to do full table scans. So we started to see results that we're getting returns in a second or so, oftentimes, through Cube. Further, with this system, we were able to further augment it such that having another abstraction layer would allow us to actually make REST API calls also and have Cube interact directly with those REST APIs. So that ability for us to say we have talented engineers and be able to interact with the open source tooling in such a way that we have a custom development was immensely powerful for us. During that whole process, to be honest, though, the Cube team was amazing. They walked us through every step of the way. Any questions we had, any problems we had, they were quick to turn around. I mean, it was surprising to see an external group turn around with solutions quicker than we can do them on our own and respond to that. And that was something that was also very important to us. I mean, we are a small startup, we are growing, but having that interaction with the team and seeing this community was very important, knowing that we can get the support when we needed it. And also we had the confidence in seeing, I mean, if you look at the rate of releases coming out from Cube, it's impressive to say the least at this point. I mean, there are minor releases going out every constantly, and that was very important, knowing that things are being adjusted. Now, there are always things that we would hope for, but nothing has been a blocker. I mean, honestly, since Ray first interviewed us, half of those issues have been resolved. I mean, it gets better every time, and it's amazing when I speak to our front-end engineers at this point and say, hey, can you update to version 26? And all of a sudden we're eliminating a lot of the custom code that we have. So it's on the right trajectory, but it's also helped us get to where we need to be. It's also been interesting for the number of people who have reached out to me after the publishing of this blog article saying, hey, I use Cube too. That there is this fan base from people who are more intimately involved with some of these bigger players who are actually using this tool behind the scenes and seeing the future there. Our deployments, we really just deployed it inside of a GKE cluster inside of GCS. With that, we also augmented our permissioning such that each user in each organization has what we call a license, and they can either have access to analytics or we can turn it off. and they can access their own personal dashboards as well as the dashboards of other users in their organization. So someone can say, I want all of my sales analysts to be looking at this every morning when they come into our system. They build it and they can assign it to and provide that dashboard to their employees. Now, the employees can have their own augmented versions of that dashboard that they need for their own work. Maybe they're only interested in TMT groups, or maybe they're only interested in a particular subregion. They can further filter the results and get that every single day. But it has also enabled us to expose all of our data points to our end users. So when there is something that we don't have access through in our old platform, we can say, hey, go into Cube and access the data point there. So it makes our tool a lot more customizable for the end user. We're empowering them to say, well, how one VC does their work is very different than how another VC does their work. And they can have their own private environments without us having to have engineers customizing the work, which allows us to also have be more cost effective than a lot of our competitors. So it's been a great journey, and we're excited to see what the Cube team releases in the near future.
Thank you, Sebastian. I mean, it's been, I think our team and others who have been at the company longer could probably do better justice. But I mean, I think I talked to you maybe my second or third week on the job, and you had just gone live. So really appreciated, talking to you about your use case. And I think, yeah, I mean, like you noted, I think there are a couple of people like posting questions as soon as I announced the blog post, like back on the 2nd. I mean, there are a couple of questions that you probably saw, Sebastian. I think one was regarding, I mean, almost like a culture shift, like rather than relying on front-end engineers, you have more focus on like analysts and data engineers. So I wanted to ask if you can talk a little bit more about that, and how that's been going.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting culture shift. It's allowed us to free up our front end developers. I mean, as a startup, hiring great talent is always one of the hardest things. So the more we can have data analysts contributing to the front end means that we're pushing features at a much greater rate. We've gotten to the point where now the bottlenecks we're having is about releasing too many features, and how do we QA all of this and make sure that every feature is up to our standard at this point, rather than how do we get data to the platform. Also, we're excited because we do trainings on Cube, and people on every single one of our teams are contributing to this. They find it easy enough to interface with our customized playground that they can say, I have an idea, let's throw it onto the platform. They can all do a drop down and say, show me the amount of money raised per quarter, for example. That's extremely easy. And just throw that on and publish it, and all users see it. And then they can track how often is it being interacted with and decide if we should keep it or we should roll it back. So it really allows us to experiment and move at a different rate.
Cool. Yeah, and there's Igor from our team has a question he posted on the chat.
Yep.
I think you mentioned some of these on the blog post as well. I mean, what are some of the key features that you want to see soonish?
I mean, for us, one of the big things was the granularities. We deal in a system that always deals about quarters, and we don't look at one quarter versus a previous quarter. We look at one quarter versus the same quarter the previous year, because there's a lot of seasonality in our industry. So being able to create custom middleware essentially to overlap how the granularity works that we can customize in our own way would be great. I think the other major one that would be hugely helpful to us is having the playground, the ability for you to create custom functions inside of there in some form, similar to Excel. So maybe I want to say one field multiplied by the other field, but we didn't have the chance to program it into the schema. So for our end users, that would mean they could have their own custom calculations that they would never even have to discuss with the Cyndx team. It can remain proprietary to them. Those are probably some of the biggest ones, honestly. The other ones, I mean, having the ability to go straight to REST APIs is probably the last thing, because there always is a translation layer that you need to go from that into a structured data, but it's been not much, honestly. Nothing that wouldn't exist with virtually every other tool.
Cool. Yeah, and I think another question that was on Slack last week, I think it was a question on the work you're doing in the DBT community. I think you briefly touched on it like a few minutes ago, but I don't know if you wanted to add. I mean, specifically, what I think your team actually was thinking about making contributions to DBT, but want to see if you have any updates.
We leverage, a lot of the work we do is proprietary to us, but we leverage DBT for virtually every team, whether it's traditional engineers for our back-end or front-end process, if they're AI, if they're data, everyone has DBT pipelines. And we've basically created a custom pipeline for Cube, which prepares data for going into Cube, and it separates it off into a separate environment such that no one can override it, has custom permissions as well. We also leverage that to do real-time predictions using things like AutoML tables. So if we're streaming data in, we want to be able to make predictions using DBT where we can just say select star and do the predictions, which allows us to create this end-to-end pipeline that essentially can go from data ingestion through prediction straight into Cube afterwards in one seamless cycle. So that really takes us from once Airflow ingests data all the way to the point where Cube then reads from our internal database tables, is all sort of managed between DBT and Airflow.
Cool.
Wow, that's super cool.
Go ahead, JC. Sorry. Yeah.
If I can. Yeah. We use Cube kind of right now for nightly, like daily roll-up numbers is primarily, and we're thinking about using it for higher frequency, like hourly, or even thinking about, wow, I wonder if we can use it for like almost real-time things. And so I was curious. So you're using DBT. I assume that's kind of on a slower cycle. But then I heard you mentioning something about the predictions. I was just curious. Are you doing real-time stuff as well?
So we're not doing real time. Our SLA's more of it on a daily cadence right now. I mean, we're dealing with funding rounds and transactions, that stuff. The hour makes no difference on when it was announced. It's just usually about the closing date and the announcement date. So we basically, our DBT pipeline, before it gets to the Cube tables, it can run it through like BigQuery ML in such a way that that can do the predictions. And then we're writing that in which Cube can then run the select statements on top of it.
Gotcha. So are you using Cube's primarily like it's Redis caching to get you that performance, 1 or 2 seconds? Or are you also letting it do like automatic pre-aggregations, or is most of that done through the DBT pipeline?
Most of it is done through the DBT pipeline. So we do use that to strip down the tables and optimize them as much as possible for what actually needs to be displayed. So that is a bit of extra work, but using BigQuery, I mean, there's always going to be a compilation cost, so we try to minimize. And then we are just using the Redis caching on top of that, as well as because a lot of our tables that people are looking at, if you're looking at a standardized dashboard, many customers will often look at the same tables. So all the users in a particular organization, for example. So we can also leverage the fact that BigQuery is going to cache that for 24 hours or up to 24 hours afterwards before they actually run that SQL statement again.
Gotcha. Cool. I can see how you're getting a lot of value out of it, especially if you're doing, like, you kind of have a bit of a pipeline with your somewhat cleaned, pared down data in place, and just pointing Cube at it with the Redis caching, instantly you're up and running. That's
yeah,
awesome.
and also, I mean, the other advantage we really had with DBT is when we get to the Cube layer, we can, before we actually promote the data, we can run all the tests from DBT against the data, ensuring, because a big problem whenever you go into self-serve analytics is how do you ensure that the end user doesn't see something that's not quite right? That's always the biggest fear. You give them the power to explore and they find all the issues in your data. So running the test in DBT allow us to ensure that there are the relationships required, that the bounds are being respected, that the general rules that are set up are always being adhered to before it gets to Cube and before anyone can actually view that data.
Cool, thanks.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Well, I mean, thanks again. I mean, not just for coming today, but working with us. I mean, I think particularly even around the holidays on the user stories, really appreciate that.
I've been happy to. Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks. All right, any other questions for Cyndx team? If not, we'll move to the next topic. I mean, this is something that's new that we're trying out this month. We're calling them feature demos. And I think RTM made a post on this on the Slack channel yesterday too. So 3 features that RTM is going to walk us through: cross database joins, managing security context in Playground, and also count distinct pre-aggregations. So in case, I think we're going to have about 20 minutes. I think it would be okay if we go slightly over, just so that we go through all the demos. But I mean, if you have any questions that's not covered during the call today, I mean, feel free to open GitHub issues and ping me, and I'll make sure that these get looked at. And I'll get to slide 10 here. I mean, there are some, you see some stability flags here that are sprinkled throughout the slides. And I'll just stop here, and I guess RTM, I'll let you share your screen, so because you're going to do some live demo as well. So let me stop sharing so you can take control, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Ray. I think you should see my screen now, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you everyone, and thank you, Sebastian, for walking us through your use case with Cube.js, and thank you for all feedback. We're really excited that you're using Cube.js, and happy kind of to continue working with you. And a few features you mentioned kind of on custom granularities and sort of the table calculations, or some kind of custom Excel style calculations. That's kind of been features that requested from multiple users and multiple teams already. So I definitely would love to maybe take a chance at some point to chat more about your use case. That's definitely on something that we'd like to work on. Awesome. So let me kind of walk you a little bit through our plans for feature demos. So starting this call, we want to do on every call sort of a small section of feature demos, what we've been working on right now, or what we have been shipped in the last months. To make sure we try to be transparent here with all the, like a level of stability of the features, we are introducing stability flags here. You will start seeing them through the docs shortly as well. So some of the features will mark as experimental. It means that we're just trying some feature, and maybe if users community will find it useful, we'll continue to support it and move then into preview or shipped. Or if it just doesn't work, where it's high chance that we may remove that. So if you see a feature marked as experimental, please use it at your own risk and pay extra attention to updates. The next level would be a preview, and preview means that the feature will definitely be a part of the product, but the API may change. So it means if you use it, it's okay, but pay extra attention to release notes, and feel free to open GitHub issues also. And a ship, it means the feature is stable, and the API should be stable. And if even we change the API, it would be through the deprecation process, where you should give enough time, like about 6 months or so, to move to the new API. So today we'll chat about 3 main features: across database join, optimization for account distinct, and security context. And the first 2, cross database and optimization distincts, they are connected to the pre-aggregations on Cube Store. So let me just spend some time here to give an overview. Many of you already know what is pre-aggregation is, but just to give you overview, it's we use pre-aggregation mainly to speed up our queries. And as Sebastian mentioned, there's multiple other ways to do that, but there is pre-aggregation is also could be helpful if you not wanted to rely only on Redis cache, but you wanted to pre-aggregate all your queries. And in some cases, especially with databases like Athena, BigQuery, and Snowflake, it would save you not only performance and time, but also kind of reduce the cost of using the databases like BigQuery. So pre-aggregation works by aggregating raw data from your database and putting them into some intermediate aggregation storage. So for aggregation storage, we've been using MySQL and Postgres for a while, but there are multiple problems we started to see. And because of that, we started to work on our own storage about like 8 months ago already. So the Cube store is a storage specifically designed to store pre-aggregation and to work with them. It addressed like a lot of issues with Postgres and MySQL. But overall architecture, as you can see on a slide, if you're using Cube store, should look like this. So you have API instances which query aggregated data from Cube store, and you have a refresh worker that kind of updates the raw data from multiple databases and puts it into Cube store. The Cube store currently is still in preview. So it means that we have it on our GitHub already. So you can check it out, you can try it, but API may slightly change. We expect more like a stable release of Cube store later this month. Okay, so let me go into the first feature. So the first feature is the cross-database join, and I know that this feature been asked multiple times already, and it's still in preview, but it's already working. You can try it out. So overall idea is that if you have two databases, you can build a pre-aggregation in one of them, and then you can join these two aggregations. So you have databases, you build pre-aggregations, you put these pre-aggregations into the Cube storage on MySQL into Postgres, and then Cube.js will join this pre-aggregation in this aggregated database. So even if this feature works with MySQL and Postgres, there are some problems, potential, especially on the performance side. So it works best with the Cube store. So we recommend to use the cross-database joins down the road with Cube store mostly, because again, MySQL, even if it works in MySQL and Postgres, there are some performance issues that may be kind of, especially on a larger data set, may be quite annoying. So let me stop doing slides here, sorry, and just share my screen. Yeah, I will walk you through the demo, how it could look like. Sorry. Okay. So I will do today's demo in a Cube Cloud, but all the features are working in open source as well. Just to give you more context, Cube Cloud is our upcoming product, which provides a fully managed kind of Cube.js platform with all the features from open source and some additional features, and it also takes care of all the infrastructure things. But again, all the features that should work in open source as well, it just would be easier for us to go through the Cube Cloud since we have everything in place here. So for the first feature is the cross-database joins. So I'm working with two Postgres databases here, as you can see. One is hosted here and the second is here. So the first database, it has companies table, and the second has users table. What I want to do, I want to join users with companies, and eventually I want to get a number of users grouped by the company size. And for that, I have all the users information in my one database, and I have all the company's information in my second database. The company size actually just dimension, which is based on the number of employees field. And also companies has a name, and I will use the name to join companies to the users. So as you can see here, users field has a company name here, and I declare to join here. So the join belongs to, and it's joined by this company name field. To be able to do this cross-database joins, the first thing I need to do is I need to define a rollups both on users and company side. So the rollup could look like this one here on the user side. So we're just getting measures users count, and we get in dimensions company name, because we'll use this to join. And then we built a second roll up here, which is just a company's name and company size. Once we have it, the next step would be to create a joint rollup. It has a spatial type called rollup join, and we just reference all the fields we wanted to have. In that case, we want to have a user's count and a company size, and also we need a company name because we joined by this field. Again, the API may change here, but the overall idea is the same. Let's just check it out how it works. The first, I can fetch the user. Let me first fetch the company size here. And as you can see, it comes from this pre-aggregation here, which is company's rollup. If I fetch measure users count, the measure I want to use, it will come from the users rollup here. But then if I add a company size here, as you can see, the generated SQL is actually a join of two rollups. So what is happening is that we have these two rollups here stored in the Cube store, and then we join them right inside the Cube store. And if we go here, we can see this table. That's the end result we want of our cross-database joins. Okay, so that's for this feature, and feel free to ask any questions. Let me actually open the chat. Yeah, I don't see any questions, so I will move to the next feature. Next feature we'll quickly chat about is optimization for distinct pre-aggregations. That's a common, especially in events analytics, that would be a common problem where we want to aggregate count distinct because it's calculation of the distinct is quite expensive. And we have been having a solution for a while called count distinct approx. For it to rely on the hyperlock lock, which is sort of the approximation of distinct calculation. And it works great in BigQuery, Snowflake, and Presta, and it can give you a pretty much precise result in quite a shorter time than original count distinct. But the problem with that was that we were not able to aggregate it in external database like MySQL or Postgres because they lack the underlying technology support. So starting with Cube Store, now you can aggregate count distinct approx just the same as you can aggregate any other measures. So it's additive, and you can just declare it and aggregate. Let me kind of quickly show you to you here. I have a different example, which is actually an example of this one. Web analytics. It's just like a small subset of this example. We have it on a GitHub. One thing we want to do here is we wanted to aggregate the events table, not only the count, but also the users count, which we use count distinct approx by user ID. We have about 70,000 events here. Let me go and check it out here. Yeah, that should be the number of events we have here. And this measure is already aggregated. So I fetch it from the aggregation table. But to be able to aggregate the events, the users count, it doesn't aggregate. It's not aggregated right now, so it comes from the raw table. What I can do now here, I can just aggregate it the same way I aggregate every other measures. So if I go into my schema here, I will just add it here, and that should work the same as it works for count distinct. Again, this feature only works in Cube Store because it has the underlying support for the approximation of the distinct. And we can go into Playground now and check the users count here. And as you can see, it comes all from this aggregation, the same as the whole number of events. Okay, let's move to the next feature here. And this is the last one for today. We have been having this request for a while. And as you all know, Cube.js uses our JWT token to pass a security context, which then you can use inside your data schema to create access control. But the problem with that it was pretty hard to test in a playground for a while. So if you have all the schema in all the security context in your schema, and then you wanted to use playground, it was kind of really hard because playground doesn't have a security context and it basically doesn't work. So what we did recently shipped is we now allow you to use a security context and manage it right in a playground. So let me go quickly into this example. As you can see here, I use in a security context, which basically restricts the orders by user ID. And if I go into playground and I want to fetch it right now, I will be able to fetch all the orders with all the user IDs. The SQL would be would just give me kind of 1 = 1, as you all know when you don't pass a security context. But now with all these features, which is available in the playground, you can edit a security context right here, which is basically a JSON payload. And we can set it to 1, then save it. And now it's all restricted only to user ID, which 1. If you wanted to change it to something like maybe 5 here, it would give us result only for 5. So that should be pretty straightforward. You also, if you use just a different token, you can pass the token directly right here. Or if you wanted to test the same in your front-end API, you can copy generated token from here and you test it within your front-end application. So I think that's all for today. We slightly off the time already. I'm happy to move to questions if you have any. If not, Ray, I will take it from here then.
Yeah, thanks, Artem. Any questions? I don't see anything on the chat. Yeah, again, like we went a couple of minutes over, I guess. I mean, as we noted earlier, I mean, if you have any further questions, feel free to open an issue on GitHub. And I mean, this is our, so I mean, questions, I mean, asking over Slack is fine, but if you can open an issue on GitHub, so we don't lose track of the conversation, I think that would be great. So, and then we're also experimenting. This is sort of our first iteration feature demo on a monthly call. I mean, for topics that require more time for discussions, and we can even think about posting a more in-depth video on our YouTube channel outside of the monthly call. So any feedback would be appreciated, and yeah, we'll try to make this sort of a regular topic going forward each month. So great. Well, thanks for joining, especially to the Cyndx team for joining us on the call, and have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you next month, if not sooner. So
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.